Inside NBC studios in Manhattan, the lights were warm. The air-conditioned stage felt calm, and laughter echoed faintly from the audience outside the curtain. Prince Harry sat quietly in the green room, reviewing the talking points his team had. Said he was here to promote a mental health awareness campaign, something close to his heart. It was supposed to be a friendly interview, something light, safe, and positive. That's what his publicist promised. That's what the producers confirmed, but something felt wrong. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just one line, "They know about Pillbox." Stared at the screen, confused, heart beating faster. Before he could reply, a production assistant knocked and said, "We're ready for you, Your Highness." He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out. The stage was bright. Kelly Clarkson smiled wide and walked toward him with arms open. The audience clapped and cheered as Harry waved and sat across from her on the pastel-colored interview set. The music faded, the claps died down, and the cameras zoomed in. The show had begun. At first, everything went as expected, Kelly asked. About his work with veterans, his children, even cracked a joke about how different California was from Buckingham Palace. Harry smiled politely. He answered each question with calmness. He even chuckled a bit. The crew relaxed. But then Kelly's tone shifted. She leaned in, still smiling, but her voice lowered slightly. "Harry, I have to ask, ... You served in Afghanistan. You've supported many military charities. But one of them, the Albion Trust, has recently come under fire. Were you aware that donations made under your name were later used to fund surveillance? In West Africa, the air froze." Harry blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. The Albion Trust. That was one of the organizations he had supported 3 years ago. He had attended events, posed for pictures, encouraged donations, all for war-torn. Recovery zones in Africa. Surveillance. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat tightened. Cameras were still rolling. "I'm sorry," he finally said. Kelly kept going. "A recent report from an international watchdog claims that some of those funds were used by former intelligence officers, not for aid, but for secret surveillance contracts targeting political groups in Sierra Leone and Nigeria. I mean, that's serious? Were you aware of that?" Harry's eyes narrowed. "No, absolutely not." The audience had gone quiet. Even the camera crew was still. Kelly's smile remained, but it was no longer warm. Was press-like, tight, rehearsed. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Harry shifted in his chair. That charity was focused on medical outreach and rebuilding education systems in post-war regions. I was assured those funds were properly audited. What you're suggesting is true, then someone's misused the trust of donors and victims alike. Kelly nodded, but her next words landed like a punch. "Some insiders say you signed off on those transfers. Documents with your name on them were recently leaked. Maybe not the full signature, but enough to suggest involvement." Harry stared at her, stunned. Backstage, a producer whispered frantically into a headset. Another was typing on a laptop, glancing nervously at the screen. Someone behind the curtain mouthed, "Cut now." But the director shook his head. They wanted this live. Harry leaned forward. "Kelly, are you suggesting that I knowingly funded illegal surveillance operations in Africa?" She replied, "I'm asking what your response is to those accusations." "Isn't a question," Harry said, voice cold now. "This is an ambush." The tension hit the studio like a wave. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kelly looked directly at him, no longer hiding behind charm. "It's a question. The public wants answered, Harry." "And who fed you that question?" he asked. "Who told you about those documents? Because as far as I know, they're not public." Silence. Harry stood up. The cameras followed as he removed his lapel mic and handed it to the assistant, who rushed over. "This isn't journalism. It's his character assassination, dressed up for morning television." And then he walked off the set. Kelly sat frozen for a second, then turned toward the cameras, forcing a nervous smile. We'll be right back after this break. The screen cut to a commercial, but the damage had already been done. Within minutes, the clip was on social media. The headlines followed fast. Prince Harry storms out of Kelly Clarkson interview, royal charity funds tied. It's a spying live meltdown on national TV, and somewhere in London, inside a secure room beneath Whitehall, a man in a gray suit watched the clip and smiled. "Phase 1 is complete," he whispered. The video of Prince Harry walking off the set was everywhere. Within 1 hour, it had reached over 20 million views on social media. TikTok, X, Instagram, YouTube, every platform was buzzing with speculation. News anchors debated the incident live. Some called it a brave moment. Others said Harry had finally cracked under pressure. But very few asked the real question: who gave Kelly Clarkson that information? And why now? Sighed there, California. Home, Meghan Markle sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the news on her phone. The headlines were brutal. Her husband's face was plastered on every screen, frozen mid-sentence, looking stunned and cornered. And she knew that look. It was the same look he had worn when they left the palace, when they were chased by photographers, when the royal family ignored her cries for help. The difference now: this wasn't the British press. This was America. And something deeper was happening. Meghan stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain slightly. A black SUV sat parked across the street. It had been there since yesterday. The windows were tinted. The engine sometimes idled at night. At first, she thought it was private security, but now she wasn't sure. She called Harry. "Where are you?" she asked. "Still at the hotel? No press here yet." "Don't leave," she said quietly. "We're being watched." There was a pause. "You saw the SUV too. I saw it move last night. It's just 30 feet. Then stop again. Same spot." Harry was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I got a message. Anonymous number. Said they know about pillbox. Do you know what that means?" Meghan's hand tightened around the phone. No, she lied. But she did. 3 weeks earlier, an envelope had arrived at their foundation's private mailbox in Los Angeles. No name, no stamp. Just a memory card inside labeled pillbox. She gave it to her assistant to scan, thinking it was a threat. Instead, it was worse. The card held scanned documents, donation trails, bank logs, British Ministry of Defense forms, and secret agreements between a London-based charity and 2 American private security firms. It also had a voice recording, a woman's voice, calm, British, professional. Operation Pillbox was designed as a cover for electronic surveillance in African political zones. The targets were not terrorists. They were activists. Meghan hadn't told Harry. Not yet. Not after everything he had been through. And now, it had somehow reached NBC producers back in New York. Inside a quiet apartment on the Upper West Side, a woman stared at the screen. Her name was Amira Khan, a former BBC investigative journalist. Now she ran a small, independent blog, mostly politics, often ignored. But earlier that morning, a contact had sent her the leaked footage of Harry's walkout before it hit the news. It came with a note. "Look into Pillbox. You're the only one left who still cares." She replayed the clip. Then she searched the word pillbox in her archived files. Dozens of classified mentions popped up, most redacted. But one old memo stood out. It was from a decade ago when she was still inside the BBC. It described a secret program that used British charities to place surveillance equipment near African embassies. Officially, it had been shut down. She looked at the names: the Albion, Trust, Scepter, Logistics, Globe Reach Africa. The same organizations Harry and Meghan had supported in 2021. She rubbed her forehead. This was no accident. Someone was trying to bury the story by blowing it up. If she didn't move fast, it would vanish under the noise. Just then, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Amira Khan. A deep voice asked, "Who is this?" They'll say, "You made it up." They'll say you've edited the files. But you didn't. And the moment you publish, they'll come for you too. Click. The line went dead. Amira stood up, grabbed her laptop, and started writing. She wasn't going to sit on this dot in London. The palace issued a one-line statement. We do not comment on the actions of members no longer serving the crown. But behind the scenes, alarm bells rang across diplomatic circles. If Harry had unknowingly been involved in covert charity funding, and if it touched U.S. operations, it could lead to hearings, leaks, and even international sanctions. The British government sent encrypted messages to Washington. Their shared concern: damage control before the public realizes what's really inside Operation Pillbox. But it was already too late. An hour later, Amira's article went live. Headline: Prince Harry, African Surveillance, and the Secret. Files the palace never wanted you to see. And within minutes, the world saw the first page of the leaked documents. Harry's signature at the bottom of a transfer form dated June 22-1. The trap had been set. Now it had fully sprung. The story spread faster than anyone had imagined. Within 12 hours, Amira Khan's blog had crashed from too much traffic. Mirror copies of the leak appeared on foreign websites, Reddit threads, and Telegram channels. Hashtags like hashtag PILLBOXfiles, hashtag Royal Scandal, and hashtag Spy Charities trended worldwide. People didn't just want gossip, they wanted answers. Prince Harry's signature at the bottom of that transfer document became the image of the hour. But few asked how such a sensitive file had surfaced. Even fewer questioned why it had been released now, in the middle of a press tour meant to highlight humanitarian work. The timing was too perfect, too sharp. Inside a secure diplomatic building in central London, Sir Malcolm Fairchild, A., senior advisor to the British Foreign Office, stood behind closed doors with a group of high-level officials. A monitor on the wall showed CNN running live coverage of the leak. A commentator was saying if Prince Harry knowingly signed off on funds that were later used in illegal surveillance abroad, this could trigger an intelligence review in both the UK and US. Fairchild turned to the others in the room. This is spiraling faster than we prepared for. We thought this would discredit him quietly. Instead, it's becoming a wildfire. If the press digs too deep, they'll find more than just Harry's mistake. They'll find ours. The others said nothing, but everyone understood. Operation Pillbox wasn't just about charities or royals. It was about collaboration between British intelligence and private. American contractors, black budget deals masked as aid missions in West Africa. Missions that broke sovereignty laws. Missions that violated international treaties. Missions that, if exposed, could bring down entire departments. We have to push blame, someone said. Shift focus to Meghan. Paint her as the manipulator. Make her the story. Fairchild nodded. Already in motion. Papers are receiving anonymous quotes about her obsession with control, her emotional breakdowns, and a possible influence over Harry's decisions. Let the press eat her alive. While the political game turned dark in London, things were collapsing in Los Angeles. Meghan stared at her phone, watching headlines change by the hour. Did Meghan push Harry into spy charity scandal? Her sources say Duchess may have known about African operations insider. Meghan refused to report charity concerns. She felt her chest tighten. Her hands shook as she closed the screen. Someone was building a narrative brick by brick, and they were building it fast. That afternoon, their security chief, a former Marine named Cooper, entered the room holding a small black device. He placed it on the table and turned a dial. A faint buzzing sound filled the air. "What's that?" Meghan asked. "Signal scrambler," Cooper said. "Can't be sure, but I found something in your guest bedroom." Small transmitter hidden in a flower vase. Her face went pale. "Are we bugged?" "Just one that I know of. But if there's one, there's likely more." Harry, sitting across from her, leaned forward. "Who would do that?" Cooper paused. "Private surveillance firms. Former intel types, the kind that don't need court warrants. Same ones linked to Albion Trust and Scepter Logistics. Harry rubbed his face in disbelief. They're not just discrediting us, they're tracking us. They want to break you, Cooper said quietly. Before you break them. The room went silent. Outside, helicopters flew low overhead. Whether they were press or something else, no one could be sure anymore. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Amira Khan sat in a train car headed toward Brussels. She had received a private message from someone using the handle Cypher7. The message read, "You want answers about Operation Pillbox? Come alone. Bring nothing but your memory." This isn't about Harry. It's about who he nearly exposed. Mira had tried reaching out to media networks, but they were all backing off. Legal departments were warning of national security concerns. Several anchors had been told by producers, "Let it die, too hot to handle." She knew she was on her own now, but something inside her burned. Quiet anger. For years, she had reported on war zones, corruption, and governments that played games with truth. But this was different. It was personal, because she knew some of the names involved in Pillbox. It's people she had trusted in her own career. Editors, diplomats, donors. As the train moved toward the Belgian border, she checked her reflection in the window. Pale, tired, but focused. She clutched the encrypted flash drive hidden in her coat. It held audio files she hadn't released. Yet, recordings of meetings, whispered confessions, hints of royal-level decisions made in back rooms. She didn't know if she'd make it back. But if Cypher7 was real and the data was real, then what lay ahead wasn't just scandal, it was conspiracy. Back in London, Sir Malcolm received a report that made him stop mid-sentence. The Americans had gone quiet. No official statement, no leaks. No commentary from the White House or State Department. That only meant one thing. They were circling the wagons, which meant something bigger was about to break. And Harry. He wasn't hiding anymore. That night, he released a short video from an unknown location. He sat in front of a dark wall. No logos, no flags, just his voice. "I served in war. I buried friends. I believed in the work we were doing, but I never agreed to this. And if my name was used to spy on the very people we promised to help, then I won't stay silent. Not for the palace, not for the press, not for anyone." The world listened. And somewhere in a private security compound outside Virginia, a man in a tailored suit watched the video and picked up his phone. "Activate Protocol Ember," he said. "Is the target Harry?" "No, the journalist. The one on the train." Asked ChatGPT. The train slowed as it neared Brussels. Snow outside had stopped, but the clouds hung low and gray. Inside the last car, Amira Khan clutched her coat tighter and watched the other passengers through the reflection in the window. She had memorized the meeting instructions from the message sent by Cypher7. No phones, no recording devices, no written notes. Just her memory and courage. The message had ended with Kordenitsa, a small cafe in a quiet part of the city. She wasn't sure if this was a trap. But she knew one thing. The truth behind Operation Pillbox went far deeper than Harry. And now, powerful people wanted her silenced before she exposed it. She got off the train, walked through the crowded terminal, and took a back alley exit. Her eyes scanned every face. A tall man in a long coat stood near a parked van. She turned down a side street. 2 blocks later, she saw the Kavla Mall Hall small, nearly empty, with a single worker behind the counter. Just like the message had described. Inside, a woman sat at the corner table. Late 40s, pale face, sharp blue eyes. She wore gloves and kept her hands folded neatly, Amira. The woman said softly, "Yes, I'm Cypher7. Sit down. We don't have long." Amira sat. No handshakes, no names. No smiles. Cypher -7 leaned in. "You've seen part of the file." But you don't know why Operation Pillbox was created or who benefited. Wasn't it about spying on political targets in Africa? Cypher 7 shook her head. That's only half of it. The program was never really about African politics. It was about training ground control, testing covert systems on soft targets where the media wouldn't care. Amira frowned. Training for what? For deployment in Europe. Was a prototype. They used it to see how much civilian surveillance could go unnoticed when masked as charity work. If it worked in Sierra Leone, they'd do the same in Eastern Europe. Some already have. Amira sat still. The air felt heavier. And Prince Harry, she asked. Collateral. He signed off on fund transfers without knowing what was behind. The paperwork. But the moment his name appeared on those documents, he became useful to those who needed a distraction. Amira leaned forward. You're saying the real plan was bigger. And now they're using Harry to draw attention away from it? Cypher 7 nodded once. Exactly. Before Amira could ask another question, the woman's eyes shifted to the window. A black SUV had parked across the street. Two men in suits stepped out. One had an earpiece. They've found you, Cypher 7 said quietly. Take the back door. Leave Brussels tonight. Head to Vienna. There's a contact at the train station. Ask for Volker. He'll give you the next piece. What about you? Cypher 7 smiled faintly. I've already disappeared. Amira stood up slowly, heart pounding, and moved to the kitchen exit. The cafe worker handed her a folded note. It was blank, but the paper felt thicker than normal. Inside was a micro SD card. She pocketed it and walked into the cold alley. Back in California, Harry and Meghan were under lockdown. Their children had been moved to a safe house. Security. Cameras monitored every inch of their property. Cooper, their head of security, had upgraded the system and installed a jammer to block drones. But even inside, there was tension. Meghan sat on the couch scrolling through the latest report. It was from a Washington think tank, quietly leaked to her team. It showed that pillbox surveillance data had been shared with U.S. intelligence partners without oversight, without warrants, and sometimes for commercial reasons. Corporations had used the data to block African governments from winning international bids. This isn't just spying, she whispered to Harry. This is economic warfare. Harry sat across from her, his jaw clenched. And they're using my name to cover the trail. Meghan nodded. Yes, and now they're coming after Amira too. Harry picked up a pen and wrote a name on a sheet of paper. Who's that? Meghan asked. She was with MI6. He said, left the agency after a failed operation in Libya. She might know more about the group behind Pillbox. If we can reach her, maybe we can finally see the full picture. Before Meghan could answer, Cooper rushed in. We've got a breach. What kind? Harry asked. Cyber, your private email just got accessed. They knew your exact location 10 minutes ago. We need to move. Now, Meghan stood quickly. Where? Safe house in Vancouver. Private jets ready in 1 hour. Harry grabbed the drive with the leaked data, zipped it in his bag, and nodded. They moved fast. No suitcases, just essentials. As they stepped outside under cover of night, Cooper scanned the tree line. The SUV across the road was gone, but the street felt watched. To quiet, to clean. As they drove toward the airport, Meghan whispered, What happens if we can't stop this? Harry looked out the window, face calm, but voice hard. Then we expose everyone. Even if it means burning down the whole system. In Brussels, Cypher 7 vanished. In Vienna, a new file waited for a meter. And in Washington, D.C., a classified meeting was called between intelligence officials and defense contractors. The subject line of the memo was simple. Pillbox leak, containment failing, prepare counter-narrative. The war was no longer secret. It had just gone global. The sun rose over Washington, D.C., but inside the windowless briefing room beneath the Capitol, the mood was dark. A group of senior officials from the Pentagon, CIA, and State Department sat around a long steel table. The screen on the wall showed clips from European news networks. Headlines flashed in English, French, and German. Pillbox files confirmed Prince Harry at center of global scandal. Western charities used in covert surveillance operations. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, a man from the CIA broke the silence. This is no longer about Harry or Meghan. This is about trust. The EU's already asking if American contractors had access to African surveillance feeds. We're looking at diplomatic fallout, trade pressure, possible sanctions. The defense secretary leaned forward. And all because one royal didn't play along. Across the world, in Vienna's Hauptbahnhof train station, Amira Khan stepped off a platform just after dawn. Her coat was heavy and her hands were cold from gripping the hidden micro-SD card. Cipher 7's instructions had been clear. Find a man named Volker in a gray coat near platform 6. She saw him instantly tall, late 50s, carrying a leather satchel. No phone, no suitcase. He made brief eye contact, then turned and began walking. She followed. 10 minutes later, inside a quiet underground coffee shop 2 levels below the street, he finally spoke. "You're being watched," he said in German accented English, but not by government, by private contractors. They work for investors who used Pillbox to gain market access in Africa, and now they want all the evidence erased. Amira nodded. "So why help me?" Volker reached into his satchel and pulled out a flash drive. "Because I was one of them, till I realized the program had turned into something else. Something dark." The files on this drive show how data collected under charity projects was sold to Western tech giants, used to sabotage African infrastructure, poison elections, and influence oil deals. Amira's hands trembled slightly. "And Prince Harry set up?" Volker said he was never meant to know. But the moment his name appeared on one financial record, they saw a chance to build a story. Leak just enough to discredit him and distract the press from everything else. Amira sat back. Why leak it now? Because the UN was preparing a resolution, Volker said. A full audit of all Western development projects in West Africa. It was set to pass next month. Pillbox was going to be exposed either way. They chose to burn Harry first, to control the story. Back in Vancouver, Harry and Meghan had just arrived at the safe house. It was a private estate surrounded by pine, forest, and silent snow. Cooper checked the perimeter, his team staying, alert for drones and thermal scans. Inside, Meghan stared at a tablet showing UK news. Royal household calls for emergency meeting. Anonymous source says Meghan was emotionally unstable. During Africa trips, Prince William deeply concerned about Harry's behavior. The palace had finally responded, not with facts, but with character assassination. Harry sat on the couch, holding a glass of water. "They're using my brother now," he said, feeding him lines, making it sound like I've lost my mind, that Meghan's manipulating me. It's exactly what they did before. Now, they're doing it globally. Meghan said nothing. Harry's phone vibrated. Then Harry's phone vibrated. An encrypted message appeared. From Amira Khan, subject: "Urgent, I have everything. Files, sources, payments, recordings. This goes beyond. We need to go public together." He looked at Meghan. "She's in." "Then so are we," Meghan said. They called Cooper in. "Prep a statement," Harry said. "A real one. No scripts. No spin. I'll read it to camera myself. The world wants the truth. Let's give it to them." Cooper nodded but added, "One warning. Once you go live, you cross the line. They won't just discredit you. They'll come for you, legally, financially, maybe worse." Harry stood up. "Then let them come." That night, Amira booked a live stream through an independent media network based in Iceland, one of the few places with strong digital protection laws. She coordinated with Harry's team to synchronize the release. The plan was simple: expose everything, all at once. with names, files, timelines. But before she could press publish, her laptop screen went black. Power cut. Then her hotel room. Door handle jiggled slowly. She grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it in her jacket, and climbed onto the balcony, 3 floors above the alley. Just as the door burst open, she slipped over the railing and landed hard on a metal fire escape. Running footsteps followed. Someone had triggered Protocol Ember, the private kill switch activated by the security firm protecting the original pillbox financiers, and now they were hunting her. In Washington, news began leaking of a secret closed-door meeting between lobbyists, intelligence officials, and media executives. Emails hinted that certain stories would be deprioritized in the coming days. Journalists were told to avoid royal drama for a while, but it was already too late. A new headline appeared across millions of screens. Harry and Meghan break silence in explosive global broadcast files to be released in 24 hours and in Vienna. Amira limped into a subway station, bleeding from the arm, but still alive. She pulled out her backup phone. One button. Upload all. The files began to transfer. What had started as a tabloid meltdown was about to become an international reckoning. Ask ChatGPT. It began as a ripple, then a wave, then a full-scale information flood. At exactly 9:03 a.m. GMT, 347 files labeled Pillbox Archives Complete appeared on an Icelandic server. The links spread like fire across encrypted forums, news sites, and whistleblower networks. Within 15 minutes, global media had picked it up. The files weren't just documents, they were maps of surveillance nodes, bank transfers, emails between UK defense contractors and US tech firms, classified reports, and most damning, of all internal memos bearing the logos of British charities, US intelligence proxies, and European oil investors. And there it was again, Prince Harry's name, on funding forms, on event approvals, always public-facing, never behind. Scenes a face for something he never understood. But now, the world understood. CNN went live. Al Jazeera interrupted its coverage of a G7 meeting. BBC News dropped its usual filters. Even Fox News ran with the headline, "The Royal Truth Files global spying operation used a prince as a cover. It was official." Operation Pillbox was real. Prince Harry had been used. Hey. And now someone was going to pay. In Geneva, delegates demanded an emergency session. African leaders, many of whom had remained silent for years out of fear or pressure, stood at the podium with trembling voices and sharp truths. The president of Ghana spoke first. Western aid is no longer aid. It is surveillance wrapped in kindness. Intelligence wrapped in generosity. And while they watched us through our broken windows, they told the world we were unstable. In London, panic erupted inside government offices. Sir Malcolm Fairchild's private line rang non-stop. Internal memos warned of diplomatic fallout. A whisper came from Downing Street. A minister had resigned quietly, fearing exposure. The palace remained silent, but the silence was starting to sound like guilt. In California, the safe house was quiet. Harry sat with Meghan, eyes locked on the television. Their statement had gone viral. He had spoken clearly, directly, emotionally. No spin doctors. No palace handlers. I believed in the charities I supported. I believed we were helping, but I was wrong. They used my name, and I refused to stay silent any longer. His voice had cracked at the end, but he didn't stop. He spoke of Africa, of soldiers, of families, of the danger of being a symbol when you don't know what's behind the curtain. The curtain had been ripped open. Meghan turned to him. They're coming for the palace next. Harry nodded. They should. In Vienna, Amira Khan sat in a quiet hotel lobby with a bandage on her arm and a burner phone in her lap. A dozen global outlets had requested interviews. 2 international courts had already asked her for copies of the files. But she didn't care about the fame. She only cared that the truth had landed. Volker, the ex-intelligence officer who had given her the last drive, had vanished. No trace. His apartment empty, his car abandoned. Cipher 7's fate was unknown. People were disappearing. But the documents couldn't be erased now. The public had them. Activists had them. Governments had them. And soon, courts would have them too. Back in Washington, inside a luxury office just blocks from Capitol Hill, a group of lobbyists gathered in secret. Their companies had funded portions of Pillbox through development grants and risk security packages. Now, they were burning records, deleting emails, and planning legal exits. One man, gray-haired and tired, said they weren't supposed to connect Harry to the final phase. Another replied, "Doesn't matter now. The data's out. We shift blame. Leak a scapegoat. Who?" He looked up slowly. "Fairchild." Back in London, Sir Malcolm Fairchild poured a glass of whiskey in his quiet office and stared out the window. His phone buzzed. A short message from a restricted number. "They're naming you. They need a fall guy. Choose your exit carefully." Fairchild didn't flinch. He had known this was coming. He had helped build Pillbox years ago, when the world was different and the line between security and exploitation was thinner. But now, the line was gone. He finished his drink, then picked up his coat. Outside, reporters were already waiting. Inside Parliament, members demanded an inquiry. And in Buckingham Palace, lights burned all night. Lawyers moved in and out. Advisors whispered through hallways. A statement was being drafted, but no one could agree on the tone. Should they protect Harry or protect the crown? Because they could no longer do both. At 11:47 p.m., Harry received a text from an old friend at MI5. "They've lost control of the narrative, but someone's still watching you. Be ready." Meghan leaned into him. "What does it mean?" Harry looked up, his eyes clear but cold. "It means we're not safe yet. The files are out. But the people behind this, they're not done." Somewhere in Northern Virginia, in a bunker filled with servers and steel doors, a team of black-budget contractors studied the leaks line by line. They weren't trying to stop it anymore. They were preparing something else. One man leaned forward. "Start Phoenix Protocol." The other asked, "What's that?" A quiet pause. Then the reply, "Erase the mess. Erase the witnesses." And just like that, the war entered its next phase. Ask ChatGPT. Rain fell hard over Vancouver, washing the safehouse windows in streaks of gray. Inside, Prince Harry stood in silence, staring at a blank wall. A wall where a TV used to hang until Cooper had ripped it out an hour ago. Warning that its circuits could carry listening devices, no more electronics, no more internet. The world outside was burning with the truth. But inside these walls, silence was the only safety. Harry clenched his jaw. The world finally knew about Operation Pillbox, the surveillance, the lies, the theft disguised as aid. But now the headlines were starting to change again. The story wasn't just about injustice anymore. It was about retaliation. Cooper entered the room, face tense. "I just got word," he said. "Amira Khan's location has been compromised." Meghan looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "She was supposed to fly to Geneva this morning for a UN testimony, but the car never made it to the airport. She's missing." Harry stood still. Who has her? No one knows. No ransom. No note. Just silence. She vanished the same way Cipher 7 and Volker did. Meghan pressed her hand against her mouth. She had feared this. The people behind Pillbox weren't done. Exposing the truth hadn't defeated them, had awakened them. "They're cleaning up," Cooper said grimly. "Phoenix Protocol." "That's what they call it?" "Meaning?" Harry asked. "They eliminate every possible threat. Everyone with access. Everyone with a voice." Outside, lightning cracked dot back in Washington. At a private hangar behind Dulles Airport, a sleek black jet prepared for takeoff. On board, 2 former intelligence officers, now working for a defense consulting firm implicated in Pillbox's deepest layers. They had orders, intercept testimony, contain exposure, neutralize leaks. One of them checked his watch. Vienna, Brussels, Geneva, all loose ends, all being handled. The other man looked out the window. What about the prince? A pause. He's protected, but not untouchable. Pressure will come from the inside, family. Reputation, they'll break him quietly. Like always. But Harry wasn't breaking. That night, he recorded a second video. No script. Just his voice in a dark room. I've lived my life in shadows, he said. Told to smile, wave, and stay silent. But I won't anymore. Not while people disappear for telling the truth, okay? Not while my name is used to cover crimes I never agreed to. He paused. To those in power trying to erase the past, know this. We're not backing down. Not me, not Megan. Not the people who died to get these files out. This is not over. He sent the video to Icelandic media again. Within minutes, it was mirrored across hundreds of networks. The public roared again. Hashtags surged. Support poured in from Africa, from Europe, from activists in exile. But in the quiet places, the war got colder. In London, the palace issued its final statement. We recognize the seriousness of the revelations tied to the pillbox program, while His Royal Highness the Duke of Sussex no longer represents the crown. We are deeply concerned by the misuse of his image and charitable influence. The crown remains committed to transparency and accountability. Behind closed doors, royal advisors were divided. Some feared a full collapse of trust between the monarchy and the Commonwealth. Others wanted to strike first to discredit Harry before more came out. A private investigator was hired. Old friends were called. Stories about Meghan's past, about Harry's emotional health, about family tensions were lined up like weapons. Waiting to be fired, and in a flat in Paris, a man named Jules Martin, a freelance coder who once helped build encryption for pillbox systems, received an email. You helped create it. Now help finish it. Full erasure. Name your price. He stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it and sent a copy to Harry's lawyer. Every hour, more insiders broke ranks. One by one, they leaked audio receipts, recordings of strategy meetings, proof that pillbox wasn't one operation. It was a system, a model, used again and again, in Haiti, in Ukraine, in South Sudan, and then came the final leak, a 6-minute video, grainy, from an internal boardroom. Sir Malcolm Fairchild speaking to UK and US officials months before the scandal broke. If we're exposed, we drop a royal. Simple. Let the tabloids chew on his marriage, his money, his temper. That will bury everything else. The world exploded. The palace went dark. Sir Malcolm was found dead 3 days later. Natural causes, the coroner said. But no one believed it. The UN voted unanimously for a full investigation. Several Western NGOs were suspended. A joint European-African commission was formed to study post-colonial exploitation through foreign aid networks. And Prince Harry, he walked into Geneva alone, no security. He faced the assembly and spoke. I was used, but I stayed silent too long. That's on me, not the people who risked their lives to expose the truth. This isn't just about spies or scandals. It's about the way we hide harm behind power. I hope today begins to end that. The room stood in silence, and when he stepped down, people did not clap. They wept. Amira Khan was never found, but her voice remained in every file, every truth, every ripple that would never be silenced again. The war wasn't over, but the world would never go back.